You're tuned in to 90.9 FM KRCL, Salt Lake City, Park City, Ogden, and Provo. Heard around the world at krcl.org. And we are excited because I think this is our first Celebrity Sundance interview since we've been doing this broadcast up here. Right now I'm joined by Bernard MacMahon, a Sundance alumnus, member of the Writers Guild, co-founder of Lomax Films, writer and director of American Epic. And also joined with us is the legendary Mr. Taj Mahal, a man who has over 40 albums to his name, been recording since 1968. He's not a stranger to soundtracks. He's been doing it since 1972 when he did the soundtrack to Sounder. He's been involved with Brothers, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Rolling Stones, Rock and Roll Circus, Outside Arizona, Blues Brothers 2000, Songcatcher, Divine Secrets of the Ya-Ya Sisterhood. He's a Grammy nominee and a Grammy Award winner. He's a Doctor of Humanities from Wolford College. I feel like I got to say all this stuff about you, Taj, because you are a huge person in my life. A winner of the American Musician Lifetime Achievement Award, a man who has played with Son House, to the Rolling Stones, and all points in between, and a man who is literally a part of America's musical DNA. And he is joining us here on this couch at the Park City Museum this afternoon. Thank you for coming and being a part of our show today.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
So, we have been hearing about this film, American Epic, for a while. We have this little radio station. The public television station reached out to us and said, hey, we got this series, we might want to do a thing with you. And we were teaming up for it, and then they said, whoa, wait, there's something going on in Sundance. We're going to have to reschedule this thing for later. Then our coordinator, Eric, I think he said something. Your people said, hey, we're going to be at Sundance. And they said, well, I guess we'll come on by and tell you about American Epic. So who wants to start? I guess, Bernard, what is this movie about? And what made you inspired to do it?
The film's about the first time America started to communicate with itself through music. And I was inspired to do it because I've been fascinated and in love with American culture since I was a small boy.
When you mean the first time America decided to communicate with itself through music, are you talking the Revolutionary War, or what does that mean?
Well, American Epic is about this period in the 20s when there was an enormous technological shift that moved America and the world into the 20th century.
Yes.
It changed the way we communicate. And at that time, music was largely sold to people in the cities, people with a reasonable amount of money, and radio took off. And so the record companies decided, well, why don't we try and sell music to poor people in rural America? And there'd never been an attempt to actually market and sell music to people in Mississippi, Texas, Louisiana. And so they just invented the first electrical sound recording equipment. And they decided to take that gear on the road and record people in their local communities and then sell those recordings back to those people.
Is this post-Alan Lomax or around the same time? Pre-Alan Lomax. I didn't realize that they went out and did mobile recordings at that time. I always knew like H.E. Spears would have people come to the antique store and things like that, but they were actually mobile recording.
Yeah, so what would happen? I mean, this is a largely untold story. I mean, there's very little written about it, and virtually until the film comes out, there's been nothing known about it. No photographs, no film footage. But they decided to hold effectively auditions and talent contests throughout America, and they would advertise in the local papers saying, Columbia Records are arriving at Johnson City on April the 4th. If you'd like to be immortalised in a phonograph record, be here. And hundreds of people would sometimes come from 800-900 miles to these auditions. And we don't know what impelled them to go there. Many of them didn't own record players themselves at that stage, but there was some desire to communicate. And they arrived with this extraordinary gear that Western Electric, that's now owned by AT&T, invented, which was electrical sound recording. And effectively that meant that you could, pre that, everyone used to shout into horns to be heard. And now you had a microphone, the first ever electric amplifier, and everything was recorded onto a pulley-driven lathe. So you were cutting your records onto a piece of wax. And we effectively use the same thing for making vinyl records today. So Thriller and Led Zeppelin 4 and the new Miley and Cyrus album that comes out on vinyl will be cut using the same technology. However, at that stage, the lathe was pulley driven, so there was a giant weight that was falling to the floor that was powering this machine like a swatch. So they couldn't trust the electricity to keep a constant, steady flow of power. And it took approximately 3 minutes for that weight to hit the floor, which is why the modern pop song.
I was just going to ask you that. Is that where that came from?
Exactly. That's
Wow.
exactly where it came from. So they would go out with trunks of this gear, and they would turn up at these places like Bristol, Tennessee, Johnson City, and all different types of people would come. And the reason why it's one of, I think, for me, the great untold American stories, it brings together the three things that I always think are fantastic about America: technological innovation, the invention of electrical sound, the richness of the culture. The record companies, they were desperate to create new markets, so they basically would record anybody. African Americans, Hawaiians, Mexican Americans, Native Americans. As long as they could buy records, they'd sell records. So everyone was suddenly being recorded. And freedom of speech. The record companies were selling this music. Originally, they thought, we're just going to sell this music back to their communities. And so they encouraged these people to sing their own songs about their own lives. And so you are getting this whole portrait of America on these records, and it's really largely unedited by the record companies. That's what they said.
Tosh, why is it that we need to hear from Europeans to understand our own history? Like, I've lived here in America for so long, and I've never heard about this before. I mean, I knew about Alan Lomax, but I didn't know there were giant auditions where people would come. Like I was saying earlier, I just knew about H.C. Spears and stuff like that. Were you familiar with all of this?
I started, because it came to the culture to me. That's what people used to do. I mean, I didn't know the specifics that Bernard knows about because he delved real deep into it. But, you hear about it, that, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-grandfather say, they came down there and they put a big thing up in the middle of the town, and they told us that on Thursday and Friday it's going to record anybody that has music. You just know about that much, but you don't know how it all folded together in terms of commerce and moving from one century to the next. But I mean, as a kid, I heard every kind of music, everything from classical to Gene Autry singing blues. Just because of the fact that this revolution went on. 20 years before I came onto the scene. So it was the water I swam in that I could hear Hank Williams and hear Duke Ellington. Whereas a lot of people, they only kind of like listen to this particular kind of music. They never hear too much else. But we've been lucky. But I think that America is very funny about looking at this. It's taken a really kind of weird vibration in terms of looking into itself to see what's here. I'm always surprised.
I am too.
I'm always surprised.
Well, as a musician who's benefited from going across the water, it's amazing the respect you get when you play in Europe. And the fact that you don't have to play a 4-hour gig till 1 o'clock in the morning, and that people seem to know the history and the heritage, and they can understand the links in the chain that goes along with American music.
That's pretty easy. We have civilization, which has been relaxed unto itself. It's there. There was war, there was craziness, there was this, there was that. But people pushed out and got, okay, this is my space now. Here's what I do. I yodel in the mountains. And I do this over here. I crush my grapes down there. I make this, I make that. And everybody's made room for everybody. Here it's a movie. It's a moving feast in progress. It still hasn't calmed down. It still hasn't turned around and said, okay, so now what's in here? And then, unless they hear it from the outside,
Yeah.
You know, like the Rolling Stones come to the United States and tell them that, whatever,
It's almost like we need someone else to tell us it's okay
Yeah.
before we can trust ourselves,
Yeah,
right?
right. It's a bit of insecurity. You know, I mean, it was a new kid on the block, in 500 years, went past everybody in the world. That's a big responsibility, So along the way, things like the music have helped actually to communicate from everybody. When I was growing up, the only people, very rarely did I know European Americans that knew anything about blues.
Right.
Nowadays, it's almost very rarely you know African Americans to know about blues because the commercial aspect of selling the music, everybody got over it and went on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And it's always going to be the next thing.
Yeah, America's a very progressive culture.
Yeah.
And progressive cultures, by their nature, they don't look back.
No.
And that's what makes them exciting. And so it often takes someone from outside to look back at progressive culture and say, wow, there's a lot we can learn from those first steps that culture took. And I think, when Taj was mentioning about these acts coming in the 60s, I think what's really exciting about this period is that when these records were being made, Mexican singers were listening to country singers for the first time. Country singers were listening to African American blues singers. African American blues singers were listening to Hawaiian players and putting slide guitar in their music.
Reggae guys were listening to country music.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And all these things are meeting, and they're meeting in this fantastic kind of like explosion of art and commerce that seems to be almost unique to America. So the guys that are organising these auditions, these talent contests, a lot of them, like Ralph Peer, are song publishers. Those are people, for the listeners out there, that buy up the rights to the words and music of songs. So they're arriving and they want these people to be giving them original material that they can buy and own. So they're telling these performers, we only want you to perform your own songs that you've written yourself. So they're effectively creating the singer-songwriter. They're saying, we're not interested in anything that's been written in 10 Pound an Alley in New York.
How many songs do you think we lost because of the 3-minute part? I remember seeing a thing on Jack Owens and Bud Spires, and Alan Lomax went out there to record songs with Jack and Bud, and he said he only wanted like a particular type of song, and I think Jack decided all the other songs that he knew weren't important because those weren't the ones that Alan Lomax asked for. I mean, how many songs do you think we lost because of the 3-minute rule?
Well, I'm not sure that we've. I'm not sure that they were edited down.
Yeah.
I mean, and oftentimes the songs were with songs that were really strong. They would put them in 2 parts.
Right.
Part 1 on side 1,
Yeah.
part 2 on side 2 of the disc. But what was different about this, and you raise a really, really interesting point that nobody I've talked to has ever brought up before about the Lomax.
You're making me feel smart, thank you.
Lomax is coming in with an agenda of particular material he wants to record.
Right.
Yeah.
These guys, Victor, Columbia Records, these huge commercial organizations with these giant truckloads of gear, they have no such agenda. All they want to do is record music that's been made in Dallas that they think people in Dallas and Texas will like. And they have no idea, as long as it sells, they'll record more of it.
Regionalism.
Yeah, and it's that golden period that I think Frank Zappa talked about when the industry doesn't actually understand the
What's
art.
going on, right?
And they go, we don't know what this is, but it's selling.
That's
so let's
right.
record more of it. And those are the golden moments when culture really progresses.
That's right.
So tell us more about American Epic. Is this sort of a Ken Burns type history film? Because I don't think that, because I know that you have a lot of contemporary people involved in it. And as you've told us about the technology and commerce, is there a way you can tell us more about it?
Well, the film, it's 4 films that play for close to 6 hours, and the first 3 films travel from New York to Oahu, all across the United States, and it tells the story of 10 different musicians and families that were recorded in the 20s, all from radically different social and ethnic backgrounds, who literally changed the world with the music they made. And many of those people in the film Some are known, but some are completely unknown of how enormous their influence was.
So it's sort of a discovery of that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So that's fun. And then obviously, telling this story, we became really fascinated with the technology that America invented that allowed these records to be made. Because we would have none of this. We wouldn't have been able to record half of this material without that technology. And we started a search for a couple of years to find any photographs of any of the machinery. And there's literally none of this has survived. There are no photographs of the entire working equipment to this until we started doing the film that were in existence. And none of the machinery survived in any of the institutions, even the company that built it originally. And so I tracked down an engineer, Nick Berg, in Los Angeles, who had privately over the last 10 years been rebuilding the entire Western Electric recording system from original parts scavenged from around the world. And we found the only working recording lathe from the 20s in the basement of the family who invented it, the Scully family.
Wow.
We put those together and we thought, I went to see Jack White, I spoke to Taj and said, why don't we try recording contemporary artists on this machine in exactly the same way they did back then? So like we tell the story of Hannibal crossing the Alps, then we actually get the elements and try to do it ourselves. And so we brought all these artists in, literally back to back, 2 artists a day to record everything live, direct to wax.
Was it? I'm guessing it had to have been harder, Taj. No, it was easier.
It's so much easier.
Well, I'm just thinking you don't have a chance to do a second take.
So what?
Well, but you got to nail it the first time, right? I mean, you're Taj Mahal, you can do that, but
No, anybody. Well, how do you think those musicians played back in
I
those
bet they
days?
practiced a lot before they played those songs.
They could have practiced a lot, but when it came time to be in the studio, if they had to do it 14 times in a row, I bet you it was 14 great times.
Taj, tell the story. I think this would be great for listeners. Tell the story of when you had Yank Rachel, and he never thought that Charlie Patton.
Yeah. Well, back in the 60s, I was living in California, and I lived 15 minutes from the LAX airport, and so oftentimes, if the older bluesmen who there was this club that just played all the old guys, and all the old women. I mean, just in bands and whatnot. So I hung out around there because I didn't get to see anybody. But Sleepy John Estes and Yank Rachel. Sleepy John Estes his songs are the Diving Duck Blues. Everybody Ought to Change Sometime. Well, both on my first record.
And Yank did She Got
Someday,
the Cake.
Baby.
That's right. Yank was the one that came up with She Got the Katie. And I added the lyrics more.
Him and Louie Bluey, by the way.
Yeah,
I love that film.
That's
I feel like we got to say that while we're talking.
Oh yeah, please. Definitely Louis Bluey. That's Martin Bogan and Armstrong, who were the original Tennessee chocolate drops, who the Carolina chocolate drops took their name from. Okay. But Yank and John Estes were over at my house for about a month while they were touring around California. And I had some records of Charlie Patton. So these guys were contemporaries of these guys. So I figured if I put the records on, at least I would get some kind of good stories and whatnot. So I put the records on, and I played both sides of them. And at some point or another, I'd said to Yank that I really like Charlie Patton. And Yank was like, oh, no, I don't like no Charlie Patton. He don't sound like nothing. I've seen him a whole bunch of times. And Patton, he just a clown. He played a guitar between the legs, throw it up in the air, and played behind his back, and he was always drunk.
I can see Try Yank Rochelle saying that.
Yank says that. So I said, I wonder what happened if I put on, I had this double album, Orange and Jazz Library with Charlie Patton. So I put it on, played one side, played the other side, and turned it over, played the other side, played the other side. So, I don't know, a little while later, Yank coming in and says, George, was that Charlie Patton a while ago? I said, yeah. He said, sound pretty good. He said, I didn't know he could play that good. Because every time he saw him was in some kind of prevent, like some kind of
Live setting.
live setting where he was drinking and clowning and doing things that he was doing. But when he came up to Grapman in Wisconsin to record, he was getting paid. They didn't let him drink but so much. So come on. So he could do his job. He was, and we wouldn't have those recordings if those guys didn't take that kind of time.
And we had some stories like this film where you'd meet people and they would say exactly this is when Tarshan was stuff. It was really interesting because I heard other people say we don't remember him sounding that good.
Yeah.
And I think going in and having to do that all live in one take with this extraordinary machine, it brought out this Olympic level performance.
Sure, that's right.
That even their local people in their village would have never seen them perform like that. I think it brings out the very best in people, forces you to deliver your best.
Yeah.
When did you first hear about the film, and what made you want to be involved in it, Tosh?
Well, I've always got my radar for good things that really make a difference. But it was Adam Block over, who was the head of Sony
Legacy.
Sony Legacy at Sony Music in New York. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him since he started working at Sony. He called me up and told me he had a friend of his from England who was doing a really very interesting project, and somehow or another it had my name on it. So would I be willing to call and receive a call, or however we wanted to do it? And so I called and talked to Bernard about this, and it was like, oh yeah, sign me up, coach. Put me in, I'm ready.
Well, Bernard, I mean, you have a lot of people involved in this project. How did you get the momentum? Was it, and when did the idea come to you? And because you have Robert Redford is producing this, Jack White is involved in this, T-Bone Burnett, Taj Mahal. I know that Willie Nelson and Merle did something along with this too. How does somebody have an idea that catches that much momentum and pulls in that much talent?
Well, it's just terrific to have those people involved in it. We've just approached trying to tell the story as honestly, as passionately as we can.
Is there somebody that helped you to get the message?
Well, Alison, our producer, was like was a huge factor in that. She went to see Bob Dylan's manager, Jeff Rosen.
Mm-hmm.
She sat down with him and said, "We're working on this film project," and she figured that Jeff would have an interest in this era, which he did.
Mm-hmm.
And she was able to show him some of the pictures and film footage we'd found, and he obviously recognised that this stuff hadn't been seen before. And so he suggested, why don't you talk to T-Bone Burnett? Got on the phone to T-Bone there and then. And so we flew out to LA and met with T-Bone.
That had it been exciting.
It was strange. We went to a place called the Village Recorder in Hollywood, and I came into the room, and there were these two guys slumped over the mixing console. It was in the evening, listening to a mix, and then the chairs stood all around. It's T-Bone Burnett and Elton John.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah.
I know, because I was Leon Russell was involved in that.
That's their
Oh, it's during that Leon Russell John album.
Yeah, because
It's
I
been
was
going on for a
recording.
while.
Yeah.
I was recording with what's the crazy guy? Oh, John Mellencamp.
Yeah.
That crazy thing that he did about
The Stephen King thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in that same studio.
Yeah. And so he basically, I think he sat down and Elton said something like, T-Bone's been talking about this project all week. Do you mind if I stay and listen? So I thought, well,
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Sure, Reg.
This will be a
Sure, Reg.
yeah. And so I took me through, and they were really animated by it. I think I've worked in it so deeply with Alison and Duke Erickson, our partner and co-writer in this, that when you get this deep into a subject, you actually forget how much material you've uncovered.
Yeah.
And you